The silver ship descended through Earth's atmosphere like a falling star, its hull scarred by weapons that no human had ever seen. Inside the craft, Ambassador Zeth of the Vorthan Empire clutched his communication device with trembling hands. His people were dying, and this small blue world represented their last hope. Captain Marcus Kane stood on the observation deck of the Luna Defense Station, watching the alien vessel approach. Beside him, Dr. Nina Torres adjusted her translation equipment, her heart racing with excitement and fear. First contact with an alien species had finally happened, but the circumstances were far from what anyone had imagined. The alien who emerged from the ship stood nearly 8 feet tall, with pale blue skin and large frightened eyes. Zeth moved carefully, his hands visible and empty, every gesture screaming of desperation rather than aggression. When he spoke, his words came through the translators in broken but understandable English. "Please," Zeth began, his voice shaking. "My people are dying. The entire galaxy is dying. We need your help." Captain Kane exchanged glances with Dr. Torres. The alien's fear was genuine, almost overwhelming. "What's happening out there?" Kane asked. Zeth activated a holographic projector, showing images that made both humans step back in shock. Entire star systems lay in ruins, planets reduced to ash and bone. Massive ships, organic and twisted, moved through space like living nightmares. "The Crimson Horde," Zeth whispered. "They have been hunting us for 300 years. Every species that has faced them has fallen. They are perfect predators born for war and destruction. My people, the Vorthans, were once mighty. Now we are scattered refugees." Dr. Torres leaned forward, studying the images. "How many species have they destroyed?" 47 civilizations, Zeth replied. "Some fought back, but none succeeded. The Horde adapts to every strategy, every weapon. They do not just conquer, they hunt for pleasure." Captain Kane frowned. "What makes you think we can help? We've barely left our own solar system." For the first time since his arrival, something like hope flickered in Zeth's eyes. "Because you are different. Our scouts observed your species, from a distance. You fight each other constantly, yet you also protect each other. You create weapons of incredible destruction, then use them to maintain peace. You are confusing." "Confusing how?" Dr. Torres asked. "Every species in the galaxy evolved from prey animals or peaceful plant eaters. When faced with predators, we run or hide. It is natural. But you—" Zeth paused, studying their faces. "You evolved from hunters. When you see a threat, your first instinct is not to flee, it is to fight." The weight of those words settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Captain Kane felt something stir deep in his chest, an ancient instinct that had kept humanity alive since the dawn of time. "Show us everything," Kane said quietly. "Every ship, every weapon, every strategy they've used. If these Crimson Horde want to hunt civilized species, it's time they met some real predators." The emergency session of Earth's Global Defense Council had been called within hours of Ambassador Zeth's arrival. In the secure briefing room beneath Geneva, world leaders stared at holographic displays showing the galaxy's nightmare. General Victor Cross, Earth's top military strategist, studied the tactical data with cold, calculating eyes. 47 civilizations, General Cross muttered, tracing the Crimson Horde's path of destruction across the star map. 300 years of unopposed conquest. They're not just winning, they're playing with their food. President Elizabeth Warren of the North American Federation leaned forward. "What's our realistic chance of survival if they come here?" Dr. Kale, the Vorthon scientist who had accompanied Zeth, spoke through the translator with obvious distress. "According to all known military theory, 0%. The Horde has never been stopped. They adapt faster than any species can develop new strategies." "That's where you're wrong," General Cross said quietly. Around the table, the other military commanders nodded in agreement. There was something in their expressions that made Zeth feel deeply uncomfortable. "I don't understand," Dr. Kale said. "Your species has no experience with galactic warfare. You have primitive weapons compared to the Horde." Captain Kane, who had been silent until now, activated another display. "Show them the files from our War colleges, General. The hologram shifted to show Earth's military academies. Thousands of humans were studying warfare not as a necessity, but as an art form. They analyzed battles from thousands of years of human history, developing strategies for conflicts that hadn't even happened yet. Every human child plays war games, General Cross explained. We study conflict the way other species study mathematics. It's not just our profession, it's our obsession. Dr. Kale watched in growing alarm as the display showed human military exercises. Unlike the defensive formations he was familiar with, these humans practiced aggressive tactics. They didn't plan to defend and retreat. They planned to hunt and destroy. This is disturbing, Dr. Kale whispered. Civilized species don't glorify violence. We're not civilized, Captain Kane said with a predatory smile. We're domesticated. There's a difference. The distinction sent chills through both aliens. Seth had hoped to find allies who would help evacuate refugee populations. Instead, he was looking at beings who were already planning a war. General Cross activated a new display showing Earth's industrial capacity. Dr. Kale, how long did it take the Horde to conquer the Vortan Empire? 18 months, Dr. Kale replied sadly. How long were you at war before that? We weren't at war. We don't fight. When the Horde arrived, we tried to negotiate, then we tried to hide. The humans around the table exchanged glances. General Cross turned to President Warren. Madam President, I recommend immediate implementation of the Sparta Protocol. The what? Seth asked. Every human on Earth begins military training tomorrow, President Warren said grimly. Men, women, children, everyone becomes a soldier. We have 3 billion people. If the Horde wants to hunt us, we'll show them what happens when prey becomes predator. Dr. Kale's translator struggled with the human concept. But your civilians, your families, will fight, Captain Kane said simply. Because that's what humans do. We've been fighting for survival since we lived in caves. The Horde made one critical mistake. What mistake? Zeth asked, though he was beginning to fear the answer. General Cross smiled, and it was the most terrifying expression Zeth had ever seen. They assumed we were like everyone else in the galaxy. They assumed we were prey. The display changed one final time, showing surveillance footage from the Horde's previous conquests. In every case, the pattern was the same. The alien species would try to fight defensively, fail, then attempt to flee or surrender. The Horde has never faced a species that fights back with genuine aggression, General Cross continued. They've never encountered enemies who actually enjoy the challenge of war. They're about to learn why humans call Earth the Deathworld. As the meeting concluded, Seth realized with growing horror that his desperate plea for help had awakened something far more dangerous than the Crimson Horde. He had asked for allies and instead had unleashed apex predators who had been waiting their entire evolutionary history for a worthy opponent. The hunters were about to become the hunted. The crimson ships materialized at the edge of Earth's solar system like blood drops in water. 50 massive biovessels, each the size of a small moon, pulsed with organic energy as they began their approach toward the blue world that had dared to challenge them. War Commander Brax stood in the living bridge of his flagship, his 12-foot frame covered in natural armor that had been forged through countless battles. His red eyes gleamed with anticipation as he studied the primitive defenses surrounding the third planet. Like all of his kind, Brax lived for the hunt, and this new species had provided an interesting challenge by refusing to flee. War Commander, his tactical officer hissed through razor teeth. The prey species has deployed their vessels. Scanning shows approximately 200 ships. Brax's mandibles clicked in what passed for laughter among the Crimson Horde. 200? The Vorthans brought 3,000 ships to their final battle, and we devoured them in hours. These humans will provide sport for perhaps a day. What Brax didn't know was that Admiral Rebecca Storm had been waiting for this moment her entire career. From the bridge of the newly commissioned battleship Defiance, she watched the alien fleet approach with the calm focus of a born predator. All ships, this is Admiral Storm, she broadcast across the human fleet. Remember, we're not here to defend. We're here to hunt. Phoenix Squadron. Execute ramming speed protocol. Wolf Pack divisions. Begin stalking patterns. The Crimson Horde had conquered 47 civilizations using the same strategy: overwhelming force, combined with fear tactics. They would approach slowly, allowing their massive ships to intimidate their enemies, then crush resistance with superior firepower. But the human fleet didn't behave like prey. Instead of forming defensive positions, the smaller human ships scattered into seemingly chaotic patterns. War Commander Brax frowned as his sensors tried to make sense of the enemy formation. There was no formation. It looked like complete disorder. Begin the hunt, Brax commanded. Target their largest vessels first. The Crimson Horde ships opened fire with bioplasma cannons that had melted entire planets. The beams lanced through space toward the human fleet, but something impossible happened. The human ships weren't where the targeting computers said they should be. Evasion patterns look random, but they're not, Captain Kane reported from his destroyer Tenacious. They're using pack hunting algorithms. Each ship is a wolf, and we're herding them. Admiral Storm smiled as the Horde's first volley missed its targets. All ships execute Find Alpha. Make them think they're winning. Several human ships deliberately took glancing hits, their hulls scarred but not destroyed. To the Crimson Horde, it looked like their weapons were working. War Commander Brax ordered his fleet to close distance for the killing blow. That's when the trap closed. Phoenix Squadron now, Admiral Storm commanded. 12 human ships that had been hiding behind asteroids suddenly accelerated to impossible speeds, their fusion drives pushing them far beyond safe limits. Instead of firing at the Horde ships, they simply flew directly into them at nearly 10% of light speed. The impacts were devastating. Bioships that had survived planet-killing weapons were torn apart by kinetic energy that turned the human vessels into relativistic projectiles. 3 Horde ships died instantly, their living hulls unable to adapt fast enough to pure physics. War Commander Brax staggered as his flagship shook from nearby explosions. In 300 years of conquest, no species had ever used suicide, attacks as an opening move. Impossible! They destroyed their own ships. Sir, his tactical officer reported with growing alarm. The remaining human vessels are moving into attack formation. They're not retreating, they're advancing. Admiral Storm's voice echoed across human communications. All ships, they wanted to hunt us. Let's show them how Earth predators really fight. No mercy, no quarter. Make them extinct. The human fleet abandoned all defensive strategies and threw themselves at the Crimson Horde with savage fury. Ships that should have maintained safe distances rammed their enemies. Crews that should have surrendered when their vessels were crippled, instead detonated their reactors to take Horde ships with them. For the first time in his life, War Commander Brax felt something he had never experienced before. Fear. These humans weren't fighting like civilized prey species. They were fighting like something far more dangerous than the Horde had ever encountered. They were fighting like apex predators who had found worthy opponents. As more Crimson Horde ships fell to human tactics that defied all military logic, Brax realized with growing terror that his species might have finally met their match. The hunters had become the hunted. The surviving Crimson Horde ships retreated to the outer edge of the solar system, their biohulls healing from wounds that should have been impossible to inflict. War Commander Brax paced his bridge like a caged animal, his confidence shattered by the humans' brutal tactics. Report, Brax snarled at his cowering tactical officer. 17 ships lost, War Commander. The humans, they fight without regard for their own survival. Our psychological warfare protocols are useless against a species that welcomes death. Meanwhile, Admiral Rebecca Storm stood aboard her flagship, studying the tactical display with predatory satisfaction. Around her, the human fleet was already adapting, learning from the first engagement. Unlike the static strategies of other species, human warfare evolved in real time. Ma'am, Captain Kane reported from his battered destroyer, we're receiving reinforcements from Earth Defense Command. Admiral Torres is bringing the second fleet up from Mars orbital shipyards. Admiral Storm nodded. Good. Send a message to all human colonies. Tell them the hunt has begun. What happened next would be remembered as the moment the galaxy truly understood what humanity represented. From every human settlement across the solar system, ships began to converge on Earth. These weren't military vessels, they were civilian craft hastily converted into weapons of war. Mining ships equipped with fusion charges, transport vessels loaded with kinetic projectiles. Even luxury liners had been retrofitted with missile launchers. The human response wasn't just military, it was tribal. Every human in the system was joining the pack hunt. Ambassador Zeth watched from Luna Station in growing horror as his translator worked to process the communications flooding human channels. They weren't speaking like soldiers following orders, they were howling like wolves that had scented blood. "This is the cargo hauler Enterprise," came one transmission. "We've got 40,000 tons of refined uranium. Anyone know the best way to turn it into a bomb?" "Pleasure Yacht Serenity here. We've strapped torpedo tubes to our hull. Who wants to hunt some alien scum?" "Medical frigate Hope reporting. We've converted our surgical lasers into weapons. Let's go save the galaxy." Dr. Kale, who had been observing human behavior for weeks, finally understood the terrifying truth. "They're not just warriors," he whispered to Zeth. "They're a pack, species. When one human is threatened, they all become killers." The second wave of battle began when Admiral Torres arrived with the main Earth fleet. Unlike the probing attack of the first engagement, this was a coordinated assault that used every lesson humanity had learned from centuries of warfare. War Commander Brax watched in disbelief as 300 human ships arranged themselves, in formations that shifted and flowed like a living organism. They moved with perfect coordination, but unlike the rigid battle lines of civilized species, this was the fluid dance of predators hunting as one. "All ships, execute Pattern Omega," Admiral Storm commanded. "Show them why Earth is called the Deathworld." The human fleet split into multiple attack groups, each moving with different tactics. Some ships used conventional weapons, firing missiles and energy beams. Others employed strategies that no sane species would attempt, ramming attacks, reactor overloads, and kinetic bombardments using their own hulls as weapons. But what truly terrified the Crimson Horde was the humans' communication during battle. Instead of military reports, the channels filled with sounds that their translators couldn't properly process: war cries, battle songs, and expressions of pure, savage joy. "This is Captain Rodriguez of the Fury. I've got a Horde ship locked in close combat. Someone want to place bets on how long it takes me to gut this thing? Stormwolf Squadron, we're going to ram their flagship. Tell my wife I love her. Then tell everyone else how awesome this explosion is going to be." War Commander Brax realized with mounting terror that these humans were enjoying the battle. They celebrated their casualties as martyrs and treated each enemy kill as a personal trophy. For a species that had spent 3 centuries as the galaxy's apex predators, facing an enemy that hunted for pleasure was beyond comprehension. The turning point came when the human pack tactics overwhelmed the Horde's adaptability. No matter how quickly the bioships evolved new defenses, the humans changed their strategies faster. They fought like chaos incarnate, impossible to predict or counter. As his fleet began to collapse under the relentless human assault, Brax made a decision that would echo across the galaxy. For the first time in Crimson Horde history, he ordered a retreat. The hunters were running from their prey. The chase lasted 6 months and covered 12 star systems. What had begun as the Crimson Horde's retreat became humanity's first galactic conquest. Admiral Rebecca Storm led the human fleet like a pack of wolves pursuing wounded prey, never allowing the aliens a moment of rest or recovery. War Commander Brax had learned the most terrifying truth about humans. They didn't just fight to win. They fought to ensure their enemies could never threaten anyone again. Every Horde ship that fell was completely destroyed, its biomass scattered to prevent regeneration. The humans weren't just defeating the Crimson Horde, they were making them extinct. War Commander, his remaining tactical officer, whispered, "We've lost contact with the home fleet. The humans, they followed our retreat path back to our breeding worlds." Brax's mandibles clicked in despair. In trying to escape Earth's defenders, he had led the galaxy's apex predators directly to his species' most sacred and vulnerable colonies. The hunters had become the hunted, and now the hunted were being eradicated. The final battle took place in the Crimson Nebula, where the Horde had established their primary breeding colonies over 1,000 years ago. General Victor Cross, who had taken command of the ground assault forces, stood on the bridge of the troop transport Valkyrie as it approached the red-tinged world below. "Remember," General Cross broadcast to his troops, "we're not here to conquer. We're here to ensure this species never threatens another innocent civilization. No prisoners, no mercy, no survivors." The human ground forces that landed on the Horde worlds moved with methodical efficiency. They had studied every aspect of Crimson Horde biology and culture, learning how to destroy not just their military but their entire way of life. Where other species had tried to negotiate or show mercy, humans applied total warfare. Ambassador Zeth watched the final assault from the command ship, his translator struggling to process the human communications. They spoke of their enemies with clinical detachment now, discussing extermination the way other species might discuss pest control. "This is wrong," Dr. Kale whispered beside him. "No civilized species commits genocide." Captain Kane, who had been monitoring their conversation, turned with that predatory smile that had become so familiar. "Doctor, we tried to explain this to you months ago. We're not civilized. We're apex predators who learn to work together. When something threatens our pack, we eliminate it completely." The truth of those words became clear as reports flooded in from across Horde space. Human forces weren't just winning battles, they were systematically destroying every trace of Crimson Horde civilization. Their bioships were being converted into raw materials. Their breeding colonies were being sterilized. Their warrior culture was being erased from existence. Within a year, the species that had terrorized the galaxy for 3 centuries was extinct. The final Horde stronghold fell when Admiral Storm personally led a suicide mission into their core fortress, detonating a stellar torpedo that turned their capital system into a brief new star. The aftermath was swift and absolute. Representatives from hundreds of worlds arrived at Earth to formally surrender their independence to the new Terran Empire. They had witnessed what humans did to their enemies, and none wanted to discover what resistance might cost them. President Elizabeth Warren stood before the assembled galactic delegates in what had once been the United Nations building. The chamber had been expanded to accommodate alien species, but the message was clear. Earth was now the center of galactic civilization. "The Terran Empire offers protection to all peaceful species," Warren announced. "We will defend you from any threat, internal or external. In return, you will provide resources and obedience to human authority." Ambassador Zeth listened to the terms with growing understanding. His people had sought salvation from the Crimson Horde, and they had found it. But in saving the galaxy from one apex predator, they had delivered it to another. The humans had become exactly what they had destroyed, the galaxy's supreme hunters. The difference was that they hunted to protect their pack, and now every species in the galaxy was part of that pack. As the ceremony concluded and the new galactic order was established, Zeth realized that his desperate plea for help had changed the universe forever. Humanity had revealed its true nature, and the stars would never be the same. The age of humanity had begun.